They said no human could change a galaxy, yet one did, with a surfboard, a smile, and the stupid courage to hope. Where were you when humanity taught the stars to laugh? Tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe. Our next story begins where logic ends. The morning Mason Reddick's life changed forever started with burnt coffee and a broken surfboard. He stood in his workshop on Clearwater Beach, studying the cracked fiberglass under the fluorescent lights. 38 years old, built like he still remembered being a Marine, with a cybernetic left arm that clicked when it rained. The arm was a souvenir from Mars, along with the nightmares and the empty space where his brother used to be. Outside, tourists were already claiming their spots on the sand. Mason had learned to find peace in their predictable chaos. They came, they burned, they left. The ocean stayed, so did he. The sky split open at 9:47 a.m. Mason looked up through the workshop window just as a sphere of blue-silver light punched through the clouds. No sound, no warning. Just suddenly there, dropping toward the gulf like a stone with intent, HTP, intent, hit the water a quarter-mile out. The impact sent a wave rolling toward shore that made the early swimmers scramble. Mason was already moving, muscle memory overriding the part of his brain that wanted to pretend he hadn't seen anything. He grabbed his binoculars and headed for the beach. The sphere was HTTP-CTD rising. No, HTTP-CT rising. No smart card inline? Not rising. Something was rising from where the sphere had disappeared. A figure, walking out of the surf like the ocean had decided to birth something new. Tall, impossibly tall, humanoid but wrong, in ways his eyes kept trying to correct. She was blue, not painted blue, not wearing blue. Blue like a neon sign, like bioluminescence, like nothing that should exist outside of deep-sea footage. Her skin caught the morning sun and threw it back in patterns that hurt to look at directly. White hair floated around her head, moving independent of the breeze, and her eyes were gold coins pressed into an alien face. She walked up the beach with scientific curiosity, stopping to examine a seagull with the intensity of someone who had never seen a bird before. The seagull, showing more sense than the gawking tourists, flew away. Mason realized he was holding his breath. The blue woman turned, scanning the beach with those impossible eyes, and locked onto his workshop. Started walking directly toward him with the purposeful stride of someone following a GPS signal. He should run, call someone, do literally anything except stand there like an idiot. She stopped 10 feet away, tilted her head, and spoke in perfect English with an accent that sounded like music played backward. Explain to me why you burn dead animal flesh under solar radiation and call this leisure. Mason's brain tried several responses and settled on, you mean barbecue? If that is your term for ritualized carbon-based consumption, yes. She stepped closer, examining him the way he might examine a broken board. You are damaged. The synthetic limb replacement is crude but functional. You experienced violent trauma approximately. Her eyes unfocused. 4.3 years ago, Mars Theater, ground assault. Shrapnel composite suggests separatist munitions. Who the hell are you? Zara Lun, ethnologist, 3rd class, Kalari Expeditionary Fleet. She said it like she was ordering coffee. I am conducting unauthorized research on human behavioral patterns. You were not supposed to detect my arrival. Your visual acuity is 13% above species average. Interesting. Mason's hand drifted toward his phone. I would not recommend attempting communication with your military infrastructure, Zara said pleasantly. My ship's defensive systems would interpret that as hostile intent. The resulting neutralization would be painless, but your local power grid would experience catastrophic failure. I am told this causes significant emotional distress to your species. Are you threatening me? I am providing context. She looked past him into the workshop, at the rows of damaged surfboards, the tools, the small apartment in the back that smelled like old coffee and loneliness. You repair recreational watercraft, alone, despite obvious social nature of beach environment. You are isolating. Classic post-combat behavioral pattern. Something in Mason's chest went tight and angry. Lady, I don't know what planet you're from. Kalios Prime, second moon of Targon 7, outer reach territories. But you need to leave. Now. Before I do call someone, aliens and power grids be damned. Zara studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was completely wrong. Like someone had described smiling but never actually seen it done. No, she said simply. I believe I will stay. Your species has been declared off-limits by the Xenoethics Council, quarantined. Too dangerous for contact. But I have studied your transmissions, your history, your art. I need to understand what makes you so threatening that an entire galaxy agreed you should be contained. She walked past him into the workshop, picked up a surfboard, and examined it with genuine fascination. This is for riding waves. Deliberately, for no survival purpose. Fascinating. Mason should have been terrified, should have been running. Instead, he found himself asking the question that would change everything. How long are you planning to stay? Zara looked at him over the surfboard, golden eyes reflecting the morning light. 48 hours. Enough time to document basic behavioral patterns and confirm my hypothesis that humanity should remain isolated. She paused. Your sun feels pleasant on synthetic skin. Is that normal? Yeah, Mason said slowly. That's called sunshine. We kind of like it. Inefficient energy absorption, but I see the appeal. She set down the surfboard. I require accommodation. Your dwelling appears adequate. I will compensate you with technological upgrades to your prosthetic. Fair exchange? You want to stay in my apartment? Correct. While you study humans? Correct. And you'll fix my arm. I will optimize it. The current design is embarrassingly primitive. Mason looked at her, at the impossible blue alien standing in his workshop like she belonged there, at the way the morning light made her skin glow like a lamp, at the absolute insanity of this entire situation. 48 hours, he heard himself say. Then you leave. Zara's smile got slightly less wrong. Agreed. Now explain barbecue in detail. I must understand this burning ritual. What Mason didn't know, as he started describing the sacred art of grilling, was that Zara had been watching him for 3 weeks, that she had chosen him specifically because his isolation made him safe for study, that the Kalari had protocols for brief contact, strict rules about exposure limits, safeguards against what they called cultural contamination, and that in exactly 93 days, those safeguards would prove tragically inadequate. But that morning, explaining why humans put char marks on meat for flavor, Mason felt something he hadn't felt since Mars. Not happiness exactly, just less alone. The blue woman listened with scientific intensity, asked 17 follow-up questions, and declared barbecue sauce unnecessarily complex but admirable in its chaos. Outside, a drone with Kalari markings had been hovering, recording everything. It captured the moment Zara smiled for real, not the textbook smile, but the genuine one, the kind that wasn't in any of her training, the kind that meant she was already compromised. On the beach, life continued. Tourists played volleyball, children built sandcastles, seagulls fought over French fries, normal human chaos, beautiful and meaningless and exactly what the galaxy had decided was too dangerous to touch. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. 3 weeks in, Mason had stopped questioning the blue alien living in his workshop. Zara had claimed the corner by the window, building what she called a minimal observation station that looked like someone had crossed a computer with a jellyfish. She spent mornings recording beach activity with the intensity of an anthropologist discovering fire, taking notes in glowing symbols that floated in the air and made Mason's eyes water if he looked too long. She also made terrible coffee. Kalari didn't drink coffee, had no concept of coffee, but she had watched Mason make it and decided to experiment. The results tasted like battery acid had opinions. You are experiencing facial distortion, Zara observed as Mason forced down a sip. Is this pain response? It's called a grimace. Yeah, this is This is not good coffee. But I followed your procedures exactly. Water, ground beans, heat application. Some things you can't learn from observation. Mason dumped the toxic brew and started over. You have to feel it, the right amount of grounds, the water temperature, when to stop before it gets bitter. Intuition, Zira said, and her tone made it sound like a diagnosis. Humans rely extensively on non-quantifiable decision-making. It is extremely inefficient. It's called being alive. Mason handed her a cup of actual coffee. Try this. She studied it suspiciously, then took a careful sip. Her eyes widened, gold catching the morning light. This is pleasant, warm. The bitter and sweet elements create unexpected harmony. She took another sip, slower this time. I understand why you perform this ritual. It is inefficient, but nice, Mason finished. Nice? She tested the word. Yes, nice. It became their morning routine. Coffee at sunrise, Mason teaching Zira about human things that made no logical sense, why people paid money to ride roller coasters, why sad songs made you feel better, why anyone would voluntarily eat spicy food. Her 48 hours had become 2 weeks, then 3. Mason didn't ask when she was leaving, didn't want to know. The arm upgrade helped. Zira had spent a week rebuilding his prosthetic, integrating Kalari technology that made the old military tech look like a brick with fingers. Now it moved like real flesh, responded to his thoughts instead of crude neural impulses, even had haptic feedback that let him feel textures again. Why do you help me? He asked one night as she calibrated the tactile sensors. The arm, I mean. You said you were here to observe, not interact. Zira was quiet for a long moment, her hands moving over his forearm with the precision of a surgeon and the gentleness of something else. On Kalios Prime, we optimize, she said finally. Every action calculated for maximum efficiency, every choice running through probability matrices. I have lived 143 years and made 0 intuitive decisions. She looked up at him. You make intuitive decisions constantly, helping strangers, fixing boards for less than material cost, choosing to host a potentially dangerous alien because... She paused. Because you were lonely. That obvious, huh? Extremely obvious, but also brave. Loneliness is not a logical reason to risk security. Yet you did it anyway. Her hands stilled. I find that fascinating. Admirable. Wrong by every Kalari standard, but somehow right anyway. Mason felt something shift in his chest. Some wall he'd been building for 4 years cracking just slightly. Want to learn to surf tomorrow? He heard himself ask. Zira's bioluminescent patterns flickered. The Kalari equivalent of a double take. Surfing serves no survival function. It is pure recreation. Statistically dangerous. That's a yes, then. She tried to look stern. Failed completely. 1 session, for observational purposes only. They started at dawn when the beach was empty. Mason had modified a longboard to handle Kalari density, which was lighter than human but distributed differently. Zira stood on the sand in what she called an adaptive thermal suit that looked like someone had made a wetsuit out of starlight. The physics are straightforward, she said, studying the waves with her scanning eyes. Maintain center of gravity, use momentum from the wave's kinetic energy. Adjust for... Stop thinking, Mason said. Just feel it. I am Kalari. We do not just feel anything. Then maybe it's time to start. He showed her the basics on the sand, how to pop up, how to read waves, how to fail gracefully. Zira absorbed it all with academic precision, turning intuition into algorithms, reducing art to mathematics. Then she tried it in the water. The first wave knocked her down immediately. She surfaced confused, hair plastered across her face, golden eyes wide with something that looked like shock. I calculated incorrectly, she said. You calculated fine. You just didn't feel it. Mason paddled closer. Try again, but this time, stop trying to predict, just respond. 3 waves later, she was still falling. But on the 4th, something changed. Mason saw it happen, saw the moment she stopped thinking and just moved. She caught the wave, wobbled, arms windmilling, completely graceless and absolutely committed. She rode it for maybe 5 seconds before falling. When she surfaced, she was laughing, not the polite social laugh she'd learned to mimic. Real laughter, helpless and surprised, the sound of someone discovering joy for the first time. Her bioluminescent patterns went wild, creating light shows across her skin that had no translation, no purpose, just pure expression. Mason felt his throat go tight. "Again," she demanded, paddling back out with terrible technique and infinite enthusiasm. "I must do that again." They surfed until noon, Zara slowly getting worse as she overthought everything, then better as exhaustion forced her brain to shut up and let her body learn. By the time they collapsed on the beach, she had successfully ridden 3 waves and failed 27 times. She looked happier than he'd ever seen her. "That was highly inefficient," she said, staring at the sky. "Yep. Exhausting." "Yep. Completely pointless. Now you're getting it." She turned her head to look at him, sand stuck to her blue cheek, golden eyes bright with something her people had optimized away centuries ago. "Mason Reddick! I believe I am beginning to understand why the galaxy fears you. Because we surf badly? Because you find joy in failure. You fall down and laugh about it. You waste time on things that make you happy instead of productive. You are chaos that refuses to be efficient." She sat up, brushing sand away with careful fingers, "and that chaos is contagious." Something in her tone made him pause. "Zara? When are you supposed to leave?" Her patterns dimmed. "I was supposed to leave 21 days ago. My ship has been sending recall signals for 2 weeks. I have been ignoring them." "Why?" She looked at the ocean, at the humans playing in the waves, at the beautiful, meaningless chaos of a Tuesday at the beach. "Because I am not finished observing." "Is that the only reason?" She was quiet for a long time, long enough that Mason thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "No." They sat there as the sun climbed higher, 2 impossible beings sharing space that shouldn't exist, while overhead, satellites tracked their location and sent reports to places that had been waiting for an excuse to intervene. The galaxy had protocols for cultural contamination, strict ones, and Zara had just violated every single one by choosing friendship over duty, by HFY, duty by, choosing chaos over control, by HFY, control, by learning to laugh while falling, in HTTP, falling. In 3 days those violations would have consequences. But that afternoon, teaching a blue alien how to build a sandcastle, while Jimmy's surf shop played Tom Petty way too loud, Mason felt something he'd thought died on. HTTP, Mars Hope. It did. HTTP, Mars Hope. Its smart card inline was inefficient as hell, completely worth it. The fleet arrived on a Wednesday. Mason was teaching Zara the sacred art of the fish taco when the sky turned dark at noon. Not clouds, ships, 8 vessels hanging in low orbit like judgment waiting to fall. "That's not good," he said quietly. Zara looked up, and every bioluminescent pattern on her skin went completely dark. Fear, Mason had learned, made Kalari go dim. That is Commander Vorketh's personal fleet. Her voice was steady, but wrong. "I am being recalled. Officially. Can you refuse?" "I have been refusing for 32 days. Apparently they have lost patience." She stood, and Mason noticed her hands were shaking. "You should evacuate. They will want to interview witnesses, possibly suppress memories of my presence." Memory suppression, like sci-fi mind wipe? Gentle neural restructuring. Painless. You would wake up thinking the last 3 months were a pleasant blur. She looked at him, and her eyes were bright with something that translated across species barriers. "You would not remember surfing lessons, or terrible coffee, or you," Mason finished. "Or me." He thought about that. About forgetting the blue woman who'd crashed into his life and taught him to be alive again. About going back to the empty workshop, the isolated routine, the safety of not caring. "No," he said simply. "Mason?" I said no. "You don't get to fix my arm, teach me that joy is worth falling for, and then erase yourself like you were never here." He stood, his rebuilt arm humming with Kalari tech, his voice steady with marine training that never quite left. "If they want my memories, they can ask nicely, and I can tell them to go to hell." Zero made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "You cannot fight a galactic fleet. Watch me." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Jimmy?" "Yeah, it's Mason. Remember those weird alien conspiracy theories you always talk about after too many beers? Turns out you were right. Yeah, all of it. Listen, I need you to spread the word. Everyone who cares about the beach, get them here. Now. We've got about an hour before first contact gets official, and I want witnesses." He hung up, looked at Zara. "You showed me that chaos can be beautiful. Time to show your fleet that beautiful chaos fights back." What happened next would be discussed in xenoethics courses for decades. Jimmy, being Jimmy, didn't just spread the word. He weaponized it. Within 40 minutes, Clearwater Beach was packed. Locals, mostly, the regulars who treated the beach like their living room. Surfers, bartenders, the Rodriguez family who ran the taco stand, Derek who taught swimming lessons, Maria who sold ice cream and terrible advice in equal measure. They came because Mason asked. Because Zara had become part of their community without any of them quite noticing. Because the idea of some government types erasing their memories without permission pissed them off more than the existence of aliens. "So," Jimmy said, surveying the crowd with satisfaction, "we're defending a blue lady from Space Cops. Normal Wednesday." A transport descended from the lead ship, smooth, elegant, completely silent. It landed on the beach with the weight of empire behind it. Commander Vorketh emerged, 8 feet of chitinous nightmare, obsidian carapace gleaming, tentacle legs moving with predatory grace. His voice, when it came through the translation field, sounded like glaciers breaking. "Ethnologist Zara Loon, you are in violation of Directive 7. Prolonged exposure to quarantined species. Cultural contamination confirmed." His massive head swiveled to take in the crowd. "These humans will be processed and neutralized. Your research privileges are revoked." "These humans," Zara said, stepping forward, "have names. Mason, Jimmy, Maria. They are not specimens. They are people. They are a statistical anomaly that threatens galactic stability." Vorketh's eyes glowed red. "They weaponize emotion, turn friendship into leverage, make chaos contagious. You are proof, ethnologist. You came to study them, and now you defend them. Contamination complete." More Kalari emerged from the transport. Zara's people, elegant and cold, looking at her with disappointment that needed no translation. One of them, an older male with silver markings, spoke quietly. "Zara, we gave you one task. Document why humanity must remain contained. Instead, you taught them to surf. You learned to laugh. You chose feeling over logic." His voice carried genuine grief. "You were our brightest student. Now you are compromised." "I prefer enlightened," Zara shot back. "Commander," Mason said, stepping forward. "You want proof humans are dangerous? Fine. But you're looking at it wrong. We're not dangerous because we're chaotic. We're dangerous because we make chaos mean something. We turn suffering into art, loss into determination, fear into courage. You call that contamination?" He gestured at the crowd behind him, at the ordinary humans who'd shown up armed with nothing but stubbornness and terrible planning. "We call it hope." Vorketh studied him with predatory interest. "Hope is the most toxic human emotion. It makes you attempt impossible things. Refuse logical surrender, sacrifice for others despite no survival advantage." His tentacles rippled. "And now you have infected a Kalari with it. This cannot stand." The air pressure changed, ships overhead humming with building energy. "You have 2 options, human. Accept neural restructuring and forget this encounter. Or resist. and we contain this entire settlement for study. Either way, ethnologist Zara Loon returns to face trial for contamination. Third option, Jimmy called out. You leave, we keep our blue friend, and nobody has to find out what happens when you threaten a beach full of humans who are terrible at making rational decisions. You threaten us? You have no weapons? We have something better, Mason said quietly. We have nothing to lose and too much stubbornness to quit. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Vorketh began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like mountains falling. Magnificent. You stand before superior technology, overwhelming force and certain defeat, and you posture with courage you cannot afford. This is precisely why you were quarantined. This beautiful, stupid bravery that makes you refuse logic even when logic is correct. He took a step forward. The sand beneath him turned black, smoking. One last time, human, stand down. Accept the mercy of forgetting. Or I demonstrate exactly why your species frightens us. Mason looked at Zara, at the blue woman who'd spent 3 months learning to be imperfect and happy, at the friend he'd never known he needed until she crashed into his ocean asking questions that made no sense. Sorry, he said to Vorketh, but we're really bad at logical choices. The commander's eyes flared bright red. Then you will be an excellent case study. The ships above began to glow. Zara grabbed Mason's arm, her touch desperate. I am sorry. I should never have stayed. Never taught you to hope that we could be friends? Mason smiled. Too late. Already happened. And humans don't abandon friends just because it's logical. This will cost you everything. Yeah, he agreed. Probably will. Behind them, the crowd stood firm. No running, no panic, just humans being human. Stubbornly refusing to quit even when they absolutely should. Jimmy started playing music from his shop. Journey. Of course it was Journey. Don't Stop Believing filled the beach, completely inappropriate and absolutely perfect. Vorketh stared at them like they were a math problem that had achieved consciousness. You face annihilation with soundtrack, he said quietly. Truly, your species is insane. We prefer determined, Mason said, echoing Zara's words from minutes ago. That made her laugh, despite everything, the sound bright and broken and completely human. The fleet fired, not weapons. Scanning beams, wide spectrum, designed to map every human on the beach for processing. Mason felt it wash over him like cold light, his rebuilt arms sparking as Kalari Tech recognized itself and tried to handshake with the signal. That's when everything went sideways. The arm wasn't just Kalari Tech anymore. Zara had integrated it with his nervous system, taught it to respond to human neural patterns, essentially created a hybrid system that spoke both languages. And Mason's brain, flooded with adrenaline and determination and absolutely irrational hope, sent one very clear signal through that hybrid system. No. The arm surged, pulling power from the scanning beam, converting it, amplifying it. Mason felt electricity racing up his spine, felt his rebuilt limb burning white-hot, felt every nerve ending screaming that this was a terrible idea. He raised his arm and broadcast right back, not data, not logic, pure human emotion, channeled through Kalari technology that wasn't designed to handle anything so messy, so chaotic, so fundamentally irrational. He broadcast hope. The effect was immediate. Every Kalari on the beach staggered, their bioluminescent patterns going haywire, their carefully ordered minds suddenly flooded with something they'd optimized away millennia ago. The feeling that maybe, possibly, against all logic and evidence, things could be okay. Anyway. HTTP anyway. It lasted 3 seconds. Then Mason's arm exploded. Not literally, but close enough. The Kalari tech overloaded, circuits frying, the hybrid system burning itself out trying to channel more emotion than any technology was meant to carry. He dropped to his knees, vision whiting out, distantly aware of Zara screaming his name. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was Voraketh's voice. Quiet, with something that might have been respect. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. And that is exactly the problem. Mason woke to argument. His arm was dead weight, smoking slightly, completely fried. Every nerve ending felt like it had been stripped and dipped in acid. But he was alive, and consciousness meant awareness, and awareness meant he could hear Voraketh and Zera in a discussion that sounded dangerously close to combat. "You cannot invoke Kythera," the commander was saying. "It is archaic law, unused for centuries." "But still valid," Zera countered. "When a researcher discovers truth that challenges foundational understanding, they may stake their life on its validity. I invoke that right. Here. Now." Mason forced his eyes open. The beach was still intact, locals unconscious but breathing, the Kalari recovery team working to revive them. Zera stood facing Voraketh, her skin blazing so bright it hurt to look at, every pattern screaming defiance. "You would bet your life on them?" Voraketh gestured at Mason, at Jimmy, at the humans who'd stood against a fleet with nothing but stubbornness. "On this chaos? I would bet my life on the truth." Zera's voice carried across the beach. "That humanity is not a threat to be contained. They are a mirror. They show us what we lost when we chose pure logic, emotion, connection, the ability to hope when hope is stupid. And that makes them safe? No." She smiled, sad and beautiful. "It makes them necessary. We have spent millennia optimizing efficiency and forgot to optimize meaning. Look at what just happened. One human, one impossible gesture of defiance, and he disrupted every Kalari on this beach. Not with violence, with hope. Which proves they are dangerous? No. Which proves we are incomplete." She looked at Mason, at the burned arm, at the man who'd literally set himself on fire to protect her. "Commander, I have lived among them for 93 days. I have experienced inefficiency and joy and terrible coffee. I have learned to fall down and laugh about it, and I am better for it. You are compromised. I am awake." Her patterns flared. "We have been asleep for millennia, thinking optimization was the goal. But humans know something we forgot, that the goal is not efficiency, it is meaning, connection, love." She said that last word carefully, testing it. "Love is chemical bonding ritual with no survival benefit," Voraketh said flatly. "Love is choosing someone else's happiness over your own logic." Zera knelt beside Mason, took his burned hand in hers. "Love is rebuilding someone's arm because they deserve better. Teaching them to surf because joy matters. Staying when you should leave because maybe, possibly, this matters more than duty." Mason squeezed her hand with his good one. Tried to speak. "Managed? Did we win?" "Unknown," Zera said. "But we certainly made an impression." Voraketh watched them with unreadable expression. "Kythera requires demonstration," he said finally. "You must prove humanity's value beyond emotional argument. Show me why they should join the galaxy instead of remaining quarantined." "I already have." Zera stood, still holding Mason's hand. "Watch." She pulled data from her suit, projecting it into the air. 3 months of observations. Humans helping strangers. Creating art with no purpose. Comforting each other after loss. Building sandcastles. Singing badly. Turning tragedy into terrible jokes that somehow helped. 93 days of beautiful, stupid, absolutely human moments. "This," she said quietly, "is what we lost. This is what we optimized away. The ability to care when caring is inefficient. To create when creation serves no purpose. To connect when connection is risky." She looked at the commander. "You call them chaotic. I call them alive." The projection shifted to this morning. Humans standing against a fleet, Mason broadcasting hope through a cybernetic arm. The absolute insanity of fighting overwhelming force with nothing but determination. "And this," Zera said, "is why they must join us. Not because they are safe, because they remind us what we are fighting to preserve. Not survival. Life. Actual, messy, imperfect life. Silence. Vorketh studied the projections for a long time. Then he looked at Mason, at the burned arm, at the human who should be dead but was grinning anyway. "You are insane," he said flatly. "Little bit," Mason agreed. "You broadcast emotion through technology designed for data transfer. It should have been impossible." "We are really good at impossible." "Yes." The commander's tentacles rippled. "I am beginning to understand that." He turned to Zera. "Your cathera is accepted. Humanity will be evaluated for contact. But understand, ethnologist, you have contaminated yourself beyond recovery. You cannot return to Kalari society. Your patterns show permanent emotional instability." "Good," she said simply. "You would choose exile among humans over returning home?" Zera looked at Mason, at the beach, at the place that had taught her to fall down and laugh about it. "I am home." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war against 10,000 years of Kalari philosophy. Vorketh was silent for a long moment. Then, "You are completely compromised." "I prefer completely happy." That made him laugh, that horrible grinding sound. "Ethnologist Siralun, you are hereby exiled from Kalari space for cultural contamination beyond recovery. You will remain on Earth as permanent liaison during evaluation period." He leaned closer. "Try not to teach them anything more dangerous." "No promises," Zera said. The commander began to leave, then paused. "Human. Mason Reddick." "Yeah?" "Your arm broadcast hope with enough intensity to disrupt trained Kalari minds. That should be impossible. Our technology is not designed to channel emotion." "Maybe that is the design flaw," Mason said quietly. Vorketh stared at him, then quietly, "Yes, perhaps it is." The fleet departed as quietly as it had arrived, ships rising into orbit and beyond, leaving behind a beach full of unconscious humans and two beings who had decided that chaos was worth it. Jimmy woke first, groaning. "Did we win?" he mumbled. "Unclear," Mason said. "But we didn't lose." "Good enough." Jimmy sat up, looked at Zera. "So you are staying, Blue Lady? Apparently I am too contaminated to leave." "Outstanding. Welcome to Florida. We will ruin you further." She laughed. That beautiful, helpless human laugh that meant joy was exceeding logic. Mason looked at his dead arm, at the blue woman holding his other hand, at the beach that had become home again. "Worth it?" Zera asked quietly. "Every burned circuit," he said. The humans began waking, confused and disoriented but intact. Someone started playing music again, because apparently an alien invasion was not going to interrupt beach day. Maria was already back at the taco stand. Zera watched it all with scientific fascination and unscientific joy. "Mason," she said quietly, "what happens now?" He thought about it. About a galaxy discovering humanity. About all the chaos and connection and beautiful stupidity that was coming. About a blue alien who had learned to hope. "Now," he said, "we teach them what you taught me. That falling down is okay if you laugh about it. That efficiency is not the same as living. That hope is stupid and necessary and the most powerful thing in the universe." That sounds exhausting. Probably will be. I look forward to it. They sat there as the beach returned to normal chaos, as humans did what humans do best, refused to let overwhelming cosmic significance interrupt their day. Somewhere overhead, the Xenoethics Council was having emergency sessions about the human problem. On Clearwater Beach, a burned veteran and a contaminated alien were planning how to rebuild a cybernetic arm with properly optimized hope channels. The galaxy was about to learn what one beach in Florida already knew. Humanity was not dangerous because they were chaotic. They were dangerous because they made others want to be chaotic too. And that, Zera reflected, watching Mason argue with Jimmy about proper barbecue technique while his arms still smoked, was the most beautiful threat in the universe. 6 weeks after first contact went official, Mason's workshop had become Galactic Ground Zero. 3 Kalari observers, 2 Vornak scientists. One very confused ambassador from the Trill Consortium who kept asking why everyone was eating burned meat and calling it culture. The Rodriguez kids were teaching a purple alien the finer points of sandcastle architecture. Derek had 4 different species in his swimming class, none of them technically capable of swimming but all determined to try anyway. Clearwater Beach had become Earth's unofficial embassy, and nobody was quite sure how to feel about it. "This is chaos," the Trill ambassador complained, watching a Kalari attempt skateboarding with predictable results. "There are no protocols, no structured cultural exchange programs. You are simply mixing species and hoping for the best." "Yep," Mason agreed, working on his rebuilt arm. "That's kind of our whole thing." Zara had redesigned the prosthetic entirely, creating something that was part human determination, part Kalari precision, and entirely new. It could channel emotion now, deliberately, turning feelings into data that other species could process. Hope, fear, joy, all of it translatable. Weaponized empathy, she called it, the most dangerous thing humanity would give the galaxy. "Testing," she said, attaching the final neural interface. "Think of something that makes you happy." Mason thought of a blue alien learning to surf, of terrible coffee becoming good coffee, of finding reasons to be alive again. The arm glowed soft blue, patterns dancing across synthetic skin. Output stable, Zira confirmed. The emotional broadcast is clear, without being overwhelming. Any Kalari within 10 meters will feel gentle contentment. No disruption, just awareness. So I'm basically broadcasting good vibes. In crude human terms, yes. I can live with that. She smiled, and it was completely human now. No trace of the textbook expression she'd started with. Mason Reddick. You have turned your trauma into a bridge between species, your broken arm into a translator, your stubbornness into a philosophy. She touched his shoulder gently. You are exactly what humanity is, broken pieces rebuilt into something better. Careful, he said. That sounded almost sentimental. I am permanently compromised. I'm allowed to be sentimental. They sat there, watching through the window as humans and aliens figured out coexistence the hard way. Mostly through food, music, and shared confusion about each other's customs. The Vornak scientists were arguing about barbecue sauce with Jimmy. The Kalari were attempting volleyball with mixed results. A small crowd had gathered to watch a Trill try to understand why humans considered sunburn a badge of honor. It is working, Zara said quietly. My people are changing, slowly but changing. They are asking questions they never asked before. Why do we optimize joy away? What did we lose choosing efficiency over meaning? If hope is illogical, why does it work? What do you tell them? That logic is not the same as truth. That we were so busy being right, we forgot to be alive. She looked at him. And that sometimes, the most important things are the ones that make no sense. A message arrived on her datapad. She read it, and her patterns flickered with surprise. The Xenoethics Council has completed preliminary evaluation. Earth is being offered provisional membership in the galactic community. Restrictions remain, but the quarantine is officially lifted. That's good, right? It is unprecedented, a species going from contained to member status in 6 weeks. She showed him the report. They cite insufficient evidence of threat, overwhelming evidence of cultural value, and one specific recommendation that changes everything. Mason read it. Read it again. They want to establish hope centers? Therapy facilities modeled on human emotional processing. Locations where species can learn to feel without optimization, to create without purpose, to hope when hope is stupid. She laughed. They are creating institutions dedicated to teaching the galaxy to be illogical. And let me guess, they want humans running them. Who else would teach beautiful stupidity? Mason thought about that. About humans spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as therapists, teaching aliens to surf, to make terrible coffee, to care when caring was inefficient. "We are going to destabilize everything," he said. "Completely." Zera looked pleased. "You will teach the galaxy to fall down and laugh about it. And in doing so, you will change what the galaxy means. No pressure. Enormous pressure. You will fail frequently." She smiled. "But you will fail beautifully. And that will matter more than success ever could." Through the window they watched the Kalari finally catch a volleyball, spiking it with terrible technique and enormous joy. The team erupted in celebration, humans and aliens together, cheering for a point that meant nothing and everything. "Mason," Zera said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that breaking is not the same as broken, that optimization is not the same as living, that sometimes the best thing you can do is make terrible coffee and try again tomorrow." She took his hand. "You saved me from perfection. There is no greater gift. You rebuilt my arm. You rebuilt my understanding of existence. I believe that is the better trade." They sat there as the sun set over Clearwater Beach, painting the sky in colors that served absolutely no evolutionary purpose, and it was perfect anyway. 6 months later, the first Hope Center opened on Kalios Prime. Run by humans who taught Kalari to paint, to dance badly, to tell jokes that made no sense, to fail and try again, to choose connection over efficiency. The second center opened on a Vornak world, then a Trill colony, then everywhere, spreading like wildfire, teaching the galaxy something it had forgotten. That life was not about optimizing survival. It was about finding reasons to celebrate survival, about turning chaos into meaning, about hoping when hope was stupid, because hope was the only thing that made the universe worth it. Mason spent 3 years running the Earth Center before finally retiring back to Clearwater Beach. His arm had become legendary, a piece of living art that broadcast emotion to anyone within range. Ambassadors visited just to feel what human hope felt like. He told them all the same thing. Hope feels like standing up when you should stay down, like trying again when you should quit, like choosing to care when caring is hard. It feels like being human. Zera stayed with him, of course. Where else would she go? She had students now, Kalari, who wanted to learn the forbidden art of feeling. She taught them to surf, to make coffee, to laugh at their own failures. She taught them to be alive. On quiet mornings before the students arrived, they would sit on the beach watching the sunrise, drinking coffee that had finally achieved perfection through 3 years of practice. "Do you regret it?" Mason asked one morning. "Giving up your people? Your life?" Zera was quiet for a moment. Then, "I gave up existing efficiently. I gained living meaningfully. That is not a trade. That is an awakening." She smiled. "Besides, my people did not disappear. They evolved. Because one alien was stupid enough to crash into your ocean and learn to hope. And one human was stupid enough to let her stay. Yes, 2 idiots changing the galaxy through beautiful bad decisions." She raised her coffee cup. "To stupidity." "To hope," Mason corrected. "Same thing." They clinked cups as the sun rose over water that had seen humanity's first steps into a larger universe. Not through conquest or superiority, but through the simple revolutionary act of teaching others to care. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly the point. Years later, when historians studied the Chaos Revolution, the period when emotional awareness spread across previously logical civilizations, they traced it back to one moment, a blue alien learning to surf in Florida. One imperfect connection that rippled outward, teaching the universe that optimization was not the goal. Living was the goal. Connection was the goal. Hope was the goal. And humanity, broken and beautiful and absolutely refusing to quit, had shown them how. The Xenoethics Council eventually admitted they had been wrong. Not about humans being dangerous. That was true. But dangerous in the way fire is dangerous, necessary and transformative, capable of destruction or creation depending on how you hold it. Humanity taught the galaxy to hold fire, to fall down and get back up, to hope when hope was stupid. And in doing so, they proved the most important truth in the universe. The things that make no logical sense are often the ones that matter most. Mason Reddick, burned veteran turned galactic philosopher, lived another 40 years. He never left Clearwater Beach, never needed to. The universe came to him, seeking the wisdom of a man who had learned that breaking was not the end, just a chance to rebuild better. His last words, spoken to a young Kalari who asked what humanity's gift to the galaxy truly was, "We taught you that it's okay to be imperfect, that falling is part of flying. That hope is stupid and necessary and the only thing that makes tomorrow worth it. We taught you to be alive instead of just surviving." He smiled. "And we taught you that the best things in life make no sense at all, like friendship between species, like hope against logic, like one blue alien who crashed into an ocean and changed everything by learning to laugh." He died holding Zara's hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in inefficient colors, having lived exactly the way he taught others to live. Imperfectly, hopefully, absolutely alive. The marker they placed on the beach read simply, "Mason Reddick taught the galaxy to fall down laughing." It mattered more than you would think, and every year, on the anniversary of first contact, humans and aliens gather on Clearwater Beach. They surf badly, make terrible coffee, tell jokes that make no sense. They fall down and help each other up. They hope when hope is stupid. They live instead of just surviving. Because one human and one alien proved that chaos, properly applied, becomes meaning. And meaning is the only thing that ever really mattered. The galaxy learned to fall. And in falling, learned to fly. That is humanity's gift. That is our fuck yeah. We make chaos mean something. And we taught the universe to do the same. Maybe humanity's greatest act of rebellion was never war or conquest, but joy. We taught the galaxy that falling isn't failure if you laugh on the way down. That imperfection isn't weakness. It's proof we're still trying. In a universe obsessed with order, maybe our chaos is the most intelligent design of all. So, what about you? When was the last time you failed beautifully and laughed instead of hiding it? What part of your own chaos could actually be the thing that keeps you human? And if hope is illogical, would you still choose it anyway? If you stayed till this moment, write hope in the comments. It's our word, our rebellion. Tell us where on Earth or beyond you're watching from. Subscribe not because you're told to, but because this strange, messy little human family is building something together. Share this story if you believe that being imperfect is the most dangerous and beautiful thing we'll ever do. And don't forget to watch the next tale in the card on your screen. Somewhere out there, another alien is about to learn how to laugh. Because that's what we do. We fall, we laugh, and somehow, we make the universe a little more human.